Lies, sir, lies, and you're trying to spread them.
I know we are very ably represented in Parliament. Parliament represents the entire British Empire.
We have no representation. We're paying an exorbitant amount of tax on everything coming and going. They tax everything coming in. They tax everything going out.
Why do you think they're doing this taxes? Mr. Adams, why do you think they're doing these taxes?
To fill the king's coffers.
Exactly.
No, it's absolutely not right.
Making the king even richer.
It's supposed to be
We, the good king and the mother country has accrued a great debt because of that war, which was fought partially because of our protection.
That war with the French began in Europe.
I don't care where it began. I don't care where it began. It doesn't matter because they.
We pay. It was a political war.
Who do you think pays to keep these soldiers, these British soldiers in our...
We're paying for it,
and
we
should,
and we're benefiting
and we
nothing.
should.
In addition to paying taxes to support that, they're lodging in our home.
Well, we're very well represented, and we owe, and the mother country owes money, which we help them accrue, which we ought to help pay for.
None whatsoever. And without representation, we should not be paying taxes of any sort.
It's obvious I can't speak logically to you.
No, you can't speak logically to me or anyone else.
Sir, there's an old lady right over here. She's an indentured servant. Her owner has...
Tell you what, they've been fussing and fighting with each other all weekend, and I don't think either of them are making any motion to move one way or another. Don't you think?
Nope.
They're just going to sit there and fuss, and they keep saying the same things at each other, but I tell you what, sir, I'm going to go have a talk with them in a little while and see if we can't get that under control just a little bit. Do you have laundry you need to do?
No, not today. Not today.
Oh, I'd be glad to do some for you. Well, no, I wouldn't. I'm really done, and I really don't think I'll do any more today.
So
they're very similar to English muffins.
Mm-hmm.
She's working on bread, but I'm currently waiting on my yeast to do its thing, and then I'll let them sit for about an hour, and they come out very much like an English muffin, only they're very tiny and a lot better than the store-bought stuff. I can't eat the store-bought stuff anymore, but yeah, it's really fun. It's a 1700s recipe. I can't remember the exact date from the cookbook, but I'm using an original cookbook.
Okay.
That's a bit of a tight fit. Oh, I'll take that.
Thanks.
I said, what we're done getting hurt. I'm not sure about Oh.
Smiling upside down. Oh, yeah. You've already done that? Yeah. This seems like good when no, this ain't true. Uh-oh. George, go get the gun. Hurry. Go get it.
Having a good time.
I am Lady Susannah Randolph of the colony of Virginia, Williamsburg.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm in great fear. My heart is all aflutter for my sons. My son John is loyal to the king, as is only proper. But do you know what's going on to people who are loyal to the king? Have you seen the newspaper?
No, I have not.
In Massachusetts, the king's tea agent was tarred and feathered and ridden out of town on a pole. And my other son, Peyton, he calls himself a patriot, hangs out with that rabble, and he is a leader in this colony. He is the current chair of the governing body, the House of Burgesses, and he's encouraging them to pass resolves that are in conflict with the law of the king, and he's gotten his name on a list of men who will be hanged if they are caught. Oh, my heart.
Grandson there, that's Scott. And I'm Granny Coon.
Granny Coon.
And I've got all my little medicine pouches here in case we get burned. I've got mustard seed here to make my plasters. Mustard plaster in case he gets sunburn.
Sunburn?
Yes, because he's out there working in the sun.
So this is
Or was yesterday.
a belt of medicinal.
Yes, these are medicinal herbs. This is an old shot pouch, and it's stuffed with toad. Children, how precious salt is. We would pour our salt into a salt cellar. We would teach the kids to lick their fingers. Get some salt on your fingers. Now where your fingers are wet, the salt's gonna stick. And they taught them to salt their food like this and finish like the adults. And in American Sign Language for deaf people, that's the sign for salt.
Okay.
Whaling, you're looking for a right whale, which is the type of whale, a right whale. Most whales, when they're killed, they'll take water on and sink to the bottom. A right whale, once killed, floats. So you already have your harpoon lines on, so then you just tow them to where you're going to process them, and it cuts the labor down and the profit margin increases. So therefore they were hunted pretty much to extinction, and in modern days now surviving, how many females are there surviving?
There's only 80 producing females left in the entire world.
Of right whales today.
They were over harvested.
Because of the decimation back in the 18th and 19th century.
Okay.
Oh, this is...
Shut up to him, that is awesome. Man. Look at the end of this. Anything's happening.
My socks keep falling down, and I'm not running it.
Big man who owns the tavern. Not that big man.
Causing trouble again,
Everyone
sir.
in this community here knows that she's been indentured for several years to the tavern keeper.
Yeah. Are you watching the proceedings?
So anything that she occurs,
I'll see what I can do to find him.
any debt that she incurs or any wrongdoing that she does is out of my hands.
Mm-hmm. Well, whenever we find the tavern keeper, we'll verify that story.
That's fine. The barrister should be back in the next day or two from the assembly, and he should be able to verify that. He should have a copy of that in his records.
So that means that we'll have to keep you in holding for that long.
Well, then you better find someone else to run the tavern. My master won't have it.
We can certainly find someone. Your services have been below par, shall we say.
At least to your kind.
Yeah, I'll find that tavern keeper.
The British, y'all care to come join us? Yeah. The British, a few years back, sent all of these soldiers into the colonies to fight the French.
Get back, you dirty Virginian.
They sometimes call it the 7 Years' War, but of course it went on much longer there in between England and France. more like hundreds of years. But they had all these surplus British soldiers and officers and didn't really know what to do with them, and so they shipped them into the colonies and they fought against the French and defeated the French, and it cost the British government something like 122 million pounds to fight that war. And now the British want us to pay for it, even though we didn't have any problems with the French whatsoever. So they passed this thing just recently, the parson was telling me yesterday morning, called the Stamp Act. So any piece of paper, any law license, any indenture, any pamphlet like the ones that you have in your hand, you have to pay a tax on that. And they stamp it. And if they do not see that stamp, they can fine you for that. Even a deck of cards, this deck of cards right here, has the stamp on it right here. And it says,
Virginia, and the king who rules over it, sir.
And it says £10 penalty by selling any playing cards unlabeled. So if you got caught with a package of cards that you had not paid the tax on, they could charge you £10. Not only that, it's not like we can take our normal colonial currency that we all trade amongst ourselves all the time. It has to be in British sterling. So you have to go to one of the official governor's money changers and exchange your colonial currency for British sterling, which of course they take a cut out of when you go do that. Our newspaper friends, any sheet of newspaper that they purchase to print our news on has to have that tax stamp on there. Otherwise, they're not supposed to print any news, which is kind of like squelching our free press, our ability to discuss things amongst ourselves. So, Parliament, we have no representation in Parliament whatsoever in the House of Commons. We didn't elect any of those peoples, and here they are taxing us. If it was our colonial assembly, I would have no problem whatsoever. We know where the money is going. That money that we're sending over there to London, it's going to line some man's in Parliament's pockets. So we're losing the ability. We have taxation without representation, and we are losing our right to free speech. So I have been told, the parson also told me that there are a group of delegates from various colonies that are supposed to be getting together soon in a thing that's called, I think they said it's called the Stamp Act Congress. It's the first time the delegates from the various colonies have ever met in such a way. And maybe we will get some redress. And maybe people in the future will not have taxation without representation and will not lose our ability to freely speak. Maybe one day. So, watch out for that young man in the red coat.
That's just the color that it came. So the different waxes, it's just what the bees are collecting at the time. In different parts of and the wax changes
based on the
color.
flowers that are...
The flowers they're using, the time of year, all different kinds of things will affect that color. Different kinds of beads. Then I can melt that down. I can make, these are poured candles, a little bit different than the beautiful dipped candles that she's making. Or I can also use the wax. I make these for sewing. These are really handy for sewing to wax the thread. And to be able to, we can use it for waterproofing, we can use it on woodworking, we use it to make soap. Wax is very important. But the honey, of course, is incredibly important because it is a very important sweetener for us, because sugar is really hard to get. This is what sugar looks like. It's expensive, it comes from far away, and so it's a very cost prohibitive. And it's always produced in these Caribbean islands, places like Barbados and Jamaica. Those are places where they are going to have sugar being produced, and it's grown in these big plantations. The sugar cane is. Yeah, that's what it looks like. There's one right there that has the top and everything on it, so you can see what it looks like. But this is what the sugar cane looks like that's produced on those big sugar plantations, and it's cut, and it's a really, really difficult product. It's very labor intensive. Those plantations are staffed by slaves, and it's a really difficult life because it's an extremely labor intensive, hot, unpleasant job working in the sugar cane. So it's one of the reasons why it's so expensive. They'll process that sugar cane down, they'll pound it up, process it, and then we have the sugar that's produced from that. This is exported back to England in this form, and then this one still has a lot of the molasses in it, that's why it's brown. But the more molasses that's drained out, the more white it becomes. And then we have the molasses that's produced as well, and that's a very important part of the sugarcane process because the molasses is distilled into rum. That's either going to happen there at the plantations or after the molasses is exported. And we like rum here in the colonies. Enough rum is consumed here for every man, woman, and child to consume 4 gallons of rum a year. That does not mean that 6-month-old children are drinking 4 gallons of rum a year, but it means that there are adults who are drinking much, much more than that. So that's offsetting that. But we do have a real need for that molasses. And so this is an interesting little proposition. There is a huge trade connection that's happening. We're trading slaves and timber and plants and fabric and fish and sugar and rum. All these things are moving around all the time. And in an effort, as always, as the government does, to receive more revenue from that, the Molasses Act was passed in 1733, and that is a 6 cents per gallon tax on molasses. That sounds kind of hefty, and it would be if anybody actually paid it. It was mostly ignored, and people just pretty much smuggled molasses. It was cheaper just to pay a bribe to somebody to look the other way, and then we just went on about our business. But then, in 1764, we have the Sugar Act that's passed. The Sugar Act, unfortunately, is enforced pretty stringently, even though it reduces that tax to 3 cents a gallon on the molasses. It is much more onerous, and it's much more of the principle of the thing, because these fellows up here at the tavern that you probably heard being very vocal about their feelings about things, they're very vocal about this one, because this is a law, a tax that's passed solely to generate revenue for the British Crown on the backs of the colonists. That's the only reason this tax exists. And so that's not like we're not supporting the government other ways. I mean, there are all sorts of industries and all sorts of products that we are already contributing greatly to the economy of the mother country. But this is a tax that is taken, and this is just ridiculous. The idea that the government can just tax us and take money, it's just unbelievable. Just take it, not use it on us, just take it. Really upsetting to people. So it's actually, even though it's it's actually repealed a couple of years later, but by then the damage is done. By then, many people already have a bad taste in their mouths. And when you're talking about sugar, you've managed to do quite a bit when you're giving people a bad taste in their mouths. So that's really unfortunate. But we also have a number of people like cartoonists and other folks who begin to think about the way the beehive works and our relationship with those tax collectors and other people back in England. And they begin to think about the different kinds of bees in the beehive. We have the worker bees who do all the work. They build the wax, they make the honey, they clean everything. The worker bees do everything, exclusively female, thousands of them. We have the queen who lays the eggs, and then we have the drones. The drones, the males, they don't work. They don't do anything except eat. And so at the end of the summer, they are kicked out of the hive to die. The beehive is very efficient. So the idea of our tax collectors is perhaps being something like that as well. They toil not nor do they spend. They are not contributing to our economy. They're just taking, they're just using our resources. There becomes this idea that, well, maybe they ought to be treated a little bit like those drones are at the end of the summer, and maybe it's time for them to go away.
Interesting. Just say political cartoons.
Oh yes,
effect.
yes,
Okay.
you'll see many of those. If you're, and you'll have to hear about the Stamp Act here if you can afford to pay the tax on your paper to read your newspaper. That we do have many cartoons depicting tax collectors as drones, as just exploiters of our resources, our industrious colonists trying to produce, and they're just users.
So you said the Molasses Act was 17.
Brought us over in return for selling those contracts and getting the money, and the contracts say how many years you're going to work. But because I ran away, they made me stay more years. So I started with 4, now I have 10 years. But like I was saying, children under 15 were always sold till they were 21. You had to work that long. Even if you were like 4 or 5 or 6, you had to work until you were 21. But here in Virginia, they're going to decide that girls that are 21 are too old to get married. So they back that down to 18 so that you at least have a chance to get married. 21, you were an old maid, you know.
now's your chance for your questions. You know how you've had all kinds of questions on the way? Now's your chance.
Well, I'm here all afternoon. If you think of something while you're running around, just come run back over here and go, hey, by the way, what about? I'll be glad to tell you.
Tell her they can look at their brothers and take a guess where we're descended from.
I was going to say, that's why when you walked up, I thought, oh, now there's a countryman. You can tell that I'm from Ireland, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
And you can tell that I'm an indentured servant, yes?
Mm-hmm.
Because I wear a collar. But that's not because I'm indentured, it's because I did something wrong when I was indentured. They collar you like this to make sure everyone else knows that you're still indentured and that you're going to be in trouble if you do it again.
So what's your story?
Well, I'm from Ireland. My husband and I, you know, in Ireland, we're some filthy loyalists. You know, in Ireland, we lost all of our land because the Brits came in. Did you need something, ladies and gentlemen?
I don't know if they're still going to have an auction, Miss Maggie.
I hope not.
Okay. I don't know if you heard that.
I heard one say yes, sir, and then I heard more say no. So, but you know who the man is that owns the tavern? He's the one taking the money. So,
if they do, we got you.
I'll be calling for you. Thank you, sir.
Go loud.
I'll call loud enough. I come from Ireland. In Ireland, the British invaded and took all of our land from us. So, at least in Northern Ireland. And so, all of the land then they gave to their own lords to come over and rule. And so they divided them down, and on each of the properties then we were allowed to live there as a tenant farmer. So you know what a tenant is. We have to pay a rent and a tithe.
Right.
And through the years, the lords from England decided that they would rather do other things with the land than support people on it. So little by little they began to kick us all off. But there's nowhere to go. You know, we are in Ireland, and there was not enough land left to go places. You couldn't sign a lease and go to another place. It just got worse and worse until there was lots of us wandering up and down. We couldn't pay the rents or the tithes, and they kick us off for that, and they tear down our house so that we can't go back to it anymore. So my husband and I and the children that we had were approached by a man in a village that we went through who said that he could send us over here, and he told us that the land over here in America was free. And he said, you won't have to worry about paying rents or tithes. And we said, well, we have no money. And they said, oh, it's free. You just go over and you can get some of that free land. And we said, well, we can't. How do we go over? And he said, well, you just sign this paper right here. And sure, none of us read or write. We don't know what it says. But he says, you just sign this paper and the captain will take you over there, and then you'll have to work to pay that paper off. And we said, well, how long do we have to work? And he says, 4 years. So we decided we would do that since we had no hope where we were. The children were starving, and we took the boat ride and came over, and when we landed in Philadelphia, what we found out was that we were not sold together as a family. Mm-hmm. And the children were sold one way, and my husband was sold another way, and I was sold another way. And we also found out the children's papers that they made a mark on. I told you we don't read. Mm-hmm. The children were they were 6 and 10, and their papers were not for 4 years. Their papers were until they turned 21. So I'll never see them again. And I heard my husband died 2 years after we got here. He was close enough to me that I knew where he was, but I never got to go see. So I stayed with that master until he got sick and died, and got sold to another master, and then another master. And the one I went to at last was very cruel, and I found out that he had beat his servant to death. So when he started beating on me, I ran away. And of course I ran away 3 times, and when I did, the law put this collar on me. But another man stepped forward. The law told him he had to sell me since he'd done all the beating. So another man bought me, and then that man died. And so now I'm waiting for the other one.
Okay.
See who's going to be today.
Okay.